Hey, what's up, everybody? So, in this video, I'm going to talk about specifically why this stage of 10 to 20K per month is actually one of the hardest ones to overcome. And this might sound strange, right? Because if you're making a little bit less, you could think, well, if I make 10K, it's going to be great. And obviously, if you're beyond 10K, you're going to know already why I'm saying this. So, yeah, this is going to be super interesting to talk about. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go below and subscribe, leave a like if you want to see how to take your coaching business from 7 to 20K to all the way to 50K. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Basically, the concept that I'm want to share today with you is around that, right? Is specifically like why is it harder, right? Well, let's get straight into it. Let me share my screen here so we can actually go over this. So basically, the main thing here is when you don't have any money or you have a little bit of money, right? You're making 2K, 3K. Zero is definitely harder a lot of times because you need a job and you need to start your business on the side. But after that, when you're making 2K and you're full time, it's actually not that bad. You know, you have a lot of time. Maybe you have a few clients, so you're not delivering that much. And also, you just have very few responsibilities. You don't have a lot of money, right? But that's okay because you're still in the beginning stages and you're still learning. So what happens is that a lot of people basically the reason they start a business usually, right, is to become financially free and get their time back, right? Be able to control their time. So again, in the beginning, you don't have a lot of money, but at least you have a lot of time, right? So you can plan things, you can learn, and you can take your time. The thing is, when you get to 10K per month, you have some money. Obviously, 10K is not a little amount, but after taxes and all that, if you're in Europe, is like 5K per month, and then you have expenses. So that brings you down to 3K. So it's really not much, right? So if you actually, and you're probably working a lot, right, to maintain that type of income, even if you're a closer, for example, you're probably working like 12-hour days, 8 to 10 to 12 hours, right? So you don't really have the time. And if you actually divided the money that you're making after taxes, and after expenses into then the hours that you're working, you're probably working at minimum wage, right? Which is sometimes depressing, of course, understandably. Um, so the problem is that this is where people stay for a very long time, right? They've escaped the initial stage, so they're making more money, which is great for their bank accounts, but it's not really life-changing money that much because you're not making an insane amount, and also you don't have your time. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds. There are worse situations, but it's definitely one of the worst ones, if not like number two. So the reason why people stay here very long is because they keep thinking like employees instead of moving to the next stage, right? Um, so basically, what you need to do is you need to stop just thinking that you are your own business and need to start hiring others. And both you need to hire others and you need to hire systems. You don't really hire systems, you implement them, right? But you need to hire people that understand systems, or you need to learn them yourself so that you have a structure to your business and it's not just dependent on how you feel when you wake up, right? And basically the concept is that you want to, like, let's just draw it out. I think it's easier. Uh when you're starting out, right? Who likes the color red? Let's do this. There we go. So when you're starting out, and by the way, I learned this concept somewhat from Alex Becker, so shout out to him. When you're starting out 0 to 10K, it's you, right? It's about you selling your time and your knowledge, and that's about it, right? This is 0 to 10K. The thing is, once you get to 10K, you since you this is what you've learned, it's like you just try to put it all on yourself, right? On your shoulders. No, I have to do everything. I have to set. I have to close calls. And at some point, some people start realizing they have to hire others, but they hire very cheaply or they don't know how to hire correctly, right? So they hire a VA from the Philippines that doesn't know how to do higher level activities like setting sales or delivery. And so it's good, it's helpful, but it's not ultimately the solution, right? Whereas if you want to go from then 10K per month, right, which is the danger zone to stay, all the way to 50K, what you need to do is to it's still about you, about your brand, right? It's still a brand funnel and stuff like that. But instead of being just you, now you need to add multiple arms to you, right? Extensions of who you are. And no, you don't have to make a deal with the devil and I don't know, just grow arms. you have to hire people, right? And implement systems. So you have your two main arms, and right, that's still the leadership of the business overall. But then you need to start getting perhaps a VA first, right? Somebody to help you with tracking and small tasks. Although honestly, tracking shouldn't take that long. So never mind that. Um, let's just use this because my writing is not very good. You need to get a setter, right? A setter is a very important step at some point. A DM setter, right? To take care of your DMs and book people into your calendar. Then at some point, you want to get a closer as well, right? To take those set calls, and so bring in the people automatically. So you don't need to be on calls. You also eventually want to bring on a CSM, which is a customer success manager, basically just a delivery person that is also going to help with delivery, right? And that's important as well because a lot of people, it's not the most important thing, delivery, but on the grand scheme of things, it is, right? Because your product is what's going to make you stay in the market. So that's the next thing. Next thing you might need is also an editor, right? Perhaps you already have one. That's quite common of a hire nowadays. And most people would stop here, right? And it's like, by the way, just so you know, the way you would compensate these types of people is usually 5% for a setter, 10% for a closer, and this is depending on the price that you have, of course. A CSM, usually you have a base up until you're making 100K per month. So let's say a 1 to 3K base, depending on how many calls and things they're doing. And an editor, you just pay per reel, around 20 to 40 bucks, I would say. That's reasonable for rates. And again, most people would just stop here, right? But and these things are important, right? And depending on the stage you're at. But the most important thing is how do you combine all these things so you can get out of 10K and get to 50K as soon as possible, not just for you, but just also so you can keep these people, right? Not that you can pay them, right? You probably can pay them even at 10K, but so they actually want to stay, right? Because high caliber people, they're not going to sustain, they're not going to accept a low level opportunity for too long. They're going to want to keep increasing their income. And so if you're not able to provide that to them, they'll eventually go elsewhere, even if you're an amazing leader, right? If you're not pushing your business, you might be a great person, but they just won't want to stay, right? Understandably. I mean, if you ask yourself, like, would you stay in a company that in other positions you can make 10, 20K, but you're only making like 4 and the business is not super stressed out about getting to the next level? Well, I probably wouldn't, right? So that's the thing. And so in order for this team to work, you need to have SOPs. Okay. So these are standard operating procedures. It's a very fancy name. I don't know who named this the first. It's probably from the military. I'm pretty sure it is. But it's basically tasks. It's like when this happens, you do Y. When X happens, you do Z. Right? It's like a formula for when situations happen, you know what to do. And these are super important because then it's you first start following these SOPs, meaning when something happens, you can follow, right? If you're still the closer, for example, when somebody doesn't show up to the call, what do? Right? You call them twice, send them messages, see, why they didn't show up, and things like that, right? When somebody closes, how do you onboard them? All those things, right? SOPs. And these are great, right? But they're more important for the people that you eventually hire. If you can document everything that you do when you close somebody, when you set somebody, when you deliver somebody, right? When you edit your reels and stuff like that, that is going to be the worksheet. Let's say the SOPs, obviously, that's the best name, but it's like a map for the people that you hire. Instead of you having to teach every little thing, they have clear steps that they have to do when something happens. And this is super important. Okay, this in a way is a system, but the most important thing after this, actually the most important thing of all, I would say, is a constraint strategy. Okay, this is the most important thing because if you don't understand the constraint theory, you will not ever get to 50K per month unless you get lucky, and definitely not 100K per month. It's definitely hard to get to those levels, and only if you do it on purpose will you get there. And so yes, hire a team. That's going to be important because each on their own, they're probably going to be able to do a lot more because they have a lot more time, right, to do their one thing. and probably eventually they can get better than you ever were at sales, at setting, at delivery, and all that stuff. But also, you need to give them the systems and the network, the support, in order for them to be able to do their job to their best ability. What does that look like? Obviously, you have the SOPs, but then the constraint strategy is being able to look at all the data that is being put out by the business, right? This is why you need tracking, in order to analyze what's happening, and then based on that, make a decision on what are you going to work on next to get to the next level, right? And people kind of tend to overcomplicate this, but ultimately what it comes down to is how much are you spending, how many calls are you booking, how many are you keeping, right, are qualified, how many show up, how many close, and then how much you make from that, right? Those are the metrics you want to look at. And then there's also in the back end, like how much you renew people for, and what is your collection rate. Meaning, like, if people are going to pay like 1,000 every 30 days, like, do people always do that? Or 80% of the time they do that, but 20% they don't end up paying the installments, things like that. So this is very important, because then you can have a clear roadmap for you as well as a business owner, as a leader, right? They know what they have to do with their SOPs, and you, with your constraint strategy analysis, you will be able to tell also what to work on, right? So, for example, say you're spending $1,000 and you in 1 week, right? And then you made back 2,000. That's not a very good ROAS, that ratio, right? You want to get at least 3,000 back upfront. So because of that, that might just be the constraint, right? Now you have to analyze, why is the ratio so low? Well, that's when you then get into ways of solving it, right? It could be that you're not squeezing as much as possible from the leads that the ad is getting you, right? Usually ROAS has actually other reasons, right, for why the ROAS is low. But if nothing else is wrong, it's usually your ads. They're just too expensive for the return you're getting, right? If if the closing rate, if all the other numbers are healthy, then it's just that your cost per lead is too high. That's okay. You can fix it, right? In that case, you want to work on your messaging and your targeting, right? Mainly your messaging, though. So that's one thing. Now, let's say your close rate, right? If your close rate is below 20%, which is minimum KPI, I would say, then you have to work on that, right? Like, it's vital. You have to do that, because, well, if you don't close 20%, it's just going to be tough to scale. Just be honest. So, and there are multiple reasons, right? It could be skill, right? It could be your process, that you're not asking the right questions to elicit the right emotions from the person, or you're not handling objections in the end. So it could be a process problem. It could be a skill problem, right? The process is good, but you're not utilizing it properly, or you're not implementing it properly. Or it could be something like the people that are on the calls are all broke, right? Or a big majority, and you're not canceling enough calls. Or it could be that people that are coming on calls are super cold and they're very hard to close. So a great closer would be able to close at 20%. But since that's harder to master, even for a closer, then you will close less than 20. So basically you need to do more pre-nurturing before the call, so the person comes ready. But ultimately, this is it, right? Like 0 to 20K, you kind of can get away from just doing half-assing things, right? Oh, I closed the client, like, you're not very consistent, maybe, or you're consistent enough to just get a 10K month and then kind of hang on. But that's not going to be enough, right? That's not going to be enough to get you to 50K, and you're definitely not going to be able to hire all these people and hire them successfully, because they're not going to follow somebody who's disorganized and doesn't have these things in place. They don't know what this looks like, and also that's the other reason why they need a leadership, right? But they know what it feels like to be with somebody, to follow somebody who is not supposed to be followed, somebody who's lost, somebody who's just in it for the money, somebody who just is happy with 20K months and just needs a cheap labor to work for them, like a VA. A high quality person is not going to want to work for you. So 50K is the mark, right? It's a very dangerous place to stay at 10K and have all these people. So that's ultimately it, right? You want to have also tracking, right? So that you can actually have the data, as we mentioned, but you want to have tracking for all three areas: marketing, sales, and delivery. And you need to buy your time back, right? With these people that we talked about, and also need to know what to do in all situations. So what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate vision is you want to have a setter, a closer, a CSM, right? You want to have the systems, which is these two. So you can basically, the goal is to put 10K in ads, right? Let's make it fancy here. you want to put 10K in ads, more or less. Okay, this is not always the case, but let's say a decent ROAS, which is about 5x. You want to put 10K in ads, and then that gets you 50K per month in ad in return. Okay, upfront cash collected. So this means a 5x ROAS per month. Okay, and the way you get there is by doing this, right? You want to put it's all generated and delivered by others, right? And honestly, to get to 100K, it's more of the same. You just have to go really hard on, especially the constraint theory, and you want to make sure that the people that you hired, including yourself, right? They're doing the things that they have to do on a daily basis with quality and volume, right? Like they could be doing an amazing job, but if they're only talking to 2 people a day, right? Like the setters, if they're only having like 20 conversations, it's really not going to be much, right? But if they're having like 100, 200, 150, something like that, well, that is a lot better, right? But if in those conversations they're not doing it with quality, or there are certain situations where like somebody doesn't show up to the call, nobody does nothing, right? Nobody calls them or follows up with them or nothing, then of course you're not going to squeeze as much from the process. So everything has to be optimized. You need to have the right people in place, right? So you can have your time back. You want to have the SOPs in place, right? So to know exactly what to do, check on them to make sure they're doing it with volume and quality, and then always look at the constraints and find solutions every single week to work on them until that stops being the constraint, and now it's something else. And that's how you get to 50K and eventually 100K. Then 100K, just do more of it. So that's about it for today. Hope that was helpful, and have an amazing day. And subscribe again if you want to learn how to get to 50K per month as a coach if you're making like 5 to 10K per month.